Hello, welcome today on this April 21st, beautiful spring day. I'm Laura Goldman. I am the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss, and it is my pleasure to present to you this week's topic on the power of volume eating, essentially how to eat more food while losing weight. And this may sound familiar to you because it actually touches on a concept and a book actually that was very popular. And so this touches into it with a little bit of my own spin, but very much based off of a concept coined by a specific author that we will touch on. So without further ado, let's get started. Remember that it is the quality of your calories that matters. And you'll notice that when we're talking about volume eating, it really does come down to quality because what we're looking for is high quality without high quantity. And hopefully this can help you lock into that and identify those high quality calories, but without so much quantity. What we're going to cover is what exactly volume eating means and some examples of what high volume foods are. I also have a few tips to implement that into your everyday lifestyle, a challenge for the week, and as always, I like to leave time for any questions that you may have. So when we're talking about volume eating, it might seem a little bit contradictory to talk about eating large quantities, but also in the framework or context of taking it with GLP-1 medications. So I wanted to be very clear in that while appetite suppression is common for most people on these medications, it might not be as strong for a few people. And so this may be a tool that you can use while taking the medicines. Also, while losing weight does involve eating fewer calories, it also involves eating smarter because there's losing weight in a healthy manner and there's losing weight in an unhealthy manner. And we want to make sure that as long as we're working on weight loss, that we're doing it in the healthiest possible way. And as I say, it is about eating smarter, eating less, and this can help also with satiety. This might be something to keep in mind if you have plans to ever wean off of GLP-1 medications. This can be a technique that you'll find very handy. So what is it? And you may be familiar with the term of volumetrics, and that is a dietary approach that was coined by Barbara Rolls. She has quite a few books on this and research related to this. And the main focus is to have high volume intake of water rich, also nutrient rich, so not just water, uh, as well as low calorie foods. And the reason why the emphasis is on water here is that water, as you may know, is a heavy type of food. There's quite a bit of weight and also quite a bit of volume involved with water. It fills up the space, it has weight to it. And according to studies, seems to be this connection where people tend to eat a consistent amount or a consistent weight of food. So if we're eating for weight, then we know that if the food is a high weight but low calories, then overall throughout the day, we can expect to eat fewer calories throughout the day. Take that into context, I did have this little chart here showing some high calorie density, but maybe not quite heavy in terms of the weight versus low calorie density, but more heavy foods. The very last row is a little bit different, and I'll touch on that. But I wanted to compare here a Snickers bar, so a standard Snickers bar, which is about 52.7 grams, just a little under 2 ounces, has 250 calories. Meanwhile, if you do 2 cups of strawberries, and we're looking at 304 grams in terms of weight, that's a huge increase compared to that Snickers bar, and we're looking at just under 100 calories. So we're eating a lot of weight there, but we're getting far fewer calories. Comparison, I wanted to try and compare a little bit closer in terms of weight here. If we look at 15 Lay's potato chips, that comes out to 160 calories, which is not a ton of calories, but just like I can't remember which company advertised you can't stop at just one, most people aren't stopping at 15 Lay's potato chips. So we're not necessarily getting in 28 grams. They're probably getting in twice as much. And approaching twice as much, we have here 52 grams, which is half a cup of sliced cucumber. Again, maybe that's not enough weight to make yourself feel full, but when we're looking at just about 8 calories for half a cup of cucumber, if you doubled that, you're still, or even tripled that, you're not even coming close to what you would have been getting with those Lay's potato chips. At the very bottom here, and this is where it differs, and I was sort of looking at it from a different angle, not just looking at water weight. I also wanted to look on sort of a general volume concept. 10 Ritz crackers, which is about 32 grams, is about 160 calories, whereas 3 cups of Skinny Pop at 28 grams is 150 calories. The calories are very, very similar. The grams are also very similar, but I can imagine if you're comparing a stack of 10 Ritz crackers versus 3 cups of Skinny Pop, we still have that volume. And also, here's another aspect is that the time it takes. 3 cups of popcorn is going to slow you down a lot more than eating 10 Ritz crackers. 10 crackers can be gone in a few minutes, whereas the Skinny Pop is going to take you some time. So these are some ideas to think of when we're talking about volume eating and these comparisons. And you may ask yourself, how do we build that high volume plate? The first concept you might think of is a salad, but I promise you it does not have to be a salad. It's an easy solution, of course, but maybe that's not what you're interested in, or maybe you've never liked salads. But the idea is to build your foundation on non-starchy veggies as much as possible. So half of your plate, and this might start to sound familiar. So you have your leafy greens or cucumbers, zucchini, broccoli, cauliflower. I wanted to list a few options there. And you can see that if half your plate is filled up with these foods that are high in water, generally high in fiber, but also high in nutrients, you've filled up on quite a bit of food that's low in calories but high on nutritional impact. Also, I wanted to include that GLP-1 essential, which is protein. There are plenty good protein examples that are not too high in fat. We have our chicken, fish, eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, and also tofu and legumes or beans, which are also a bit starchy, but I think that we can count those toward your protein because the benefits they have far outnumber any of the starchiness we're looking at. And this helps protect your muscle mass. And already, if you've been with me for a few other discussions on building a GLP-1 friendly plate, this probably sounds familiar because it almost looks identical to that style of plate that we've been talking about. To continue on with that high volume plate, this is when we want to look also at fiber-rich carbohydrates, and we want that more in moderate portions. I'm sure you've seen on my previous plates that I've built, that's about 25%. And we can look at things like oats or brown rice, whole grain bread. And I also did put in here, though, lentils, beans, those you can have in larger amounts than just a quarter of the plate because there's some protein in there. So it's sort of taking up 2 sections, actually, of your plate when we're looking at those types of foods. And finally, healthy fats are important, but you do want to have them in smaller amounts. I remember I really surprised someone when I commented on a whole avocado can get you somewhere about 500 calories or more if you're eating the whole thing. It has very wonderful fats, and fats in general are essential for nutrient absorption, but we do want to be mindful that they are all high calorie, so we need to moderate our amounts. Don't go for the whole avocado, maybe just a couple slices. And olive oil, nuts, and seeds, again, very healthy, very important for our nutrition, but we just want to keep those in smaller amounts. Now, how do we work on boosting volume? We talked about the concept of that plate, but I wanted to give you some other tips to boost volume if you don't want to build a plate exactly like that. First of all, if you're sitting down somewhere and you want an appetizer, look for a broth-based soup or a large salad and get the dressing on the side. And those types of soups and that salad is going to fill you up very quickly and it's going to keep you a bit fuller longer. It lasts a lot longer than say chips or bread that is brought to the table. So keep that in mind. And then if you have recipes that you're making at home, bulk up those recipes with extra vegetables. And I'm talking 1.5 to 2 times the recommended amount, or maybe even add ones that aren't originally there. For example, I make a bolognese, a pasta bolognese at home, and it recommends 2 tablespoons of carrot and 2 tablespoons of celery. You better believe that that 2 tablespoons turns into easily half or 3/4 of a cup for each one of those vegetables. And it doesn't really affect the flavor, and I think it actually enhances it, if anything. Also, you can add spinach to your omelet, blend zucchini into sauces, or if you have rice with a dish, you can add cauliflower rice. So you've got a little bit of a half and half right there. And when it comes to cooking with vegetables, you can choose fresh or frozen. Just try to avoid the dried types or the fried types, of course. And frozen vegetables can save time since they're already pre-chopped. I gave an example here. Kroger, which is a grocery store that's very near my house, they have some types of blends of vegetables that are really good for making bases to soups or other foods. So they had this 3 pepper and onion blend where you're essentially making the beginnings of a gumbo or stock there. So it's just as healthy, picked at the peak of freshness. So feel free to save yourself some time and some effort. And finally, if we're looking at fruit, you do want to choose whole fruits over fruit juice, just because, again, you're going to be filling up with more. The juice, about 1/3 of a cup or half a cup of juice is equal to 1 whole piece of fruit. And so we want to try and get ourselves full with the real thing versus too much of juice. And now I wanted to touch on some special considerations. I know I did a little bit earlier, but again, with GLP-1s especially, if your appetite is extremely reduced, focusing on volume eating might not be right for you at this moment. But the concepts are still important. We're looking at highly nourishing foods, we're looking at focusing on protein still, and that is the primary focus. You just might have to do less of it. However, these ideas of volume eating can help build sustainable habits for long-term maintenance. And so I think it's very important that we have those habits. And again, if you are planning on coming off GLP-1s, having the concept of volume eating in your back pocket when your appetite might come back a little more strongly can really help emphasize choosing the right foods and still feeling full, feeling satisfied, but not overeating calorie-wise. I did also put this quote here because I thought it was very nice, and hopefully when you watch these types of videos or get this nutrition education, you can feel like you're being backed up by science, because patients receiving both GLP-1 therapy and structured nutrition guidance, they achieve greater weight loss, they have better adherence, and are more likely to sustain weight loss after stopping medication. And I think that's a very promising and wonderful, encouraging type of thing to hear when you're in the middle of doing all of this. Now we've moved on to our challenge of the week, and I thought let's think about a volume swap. So if you are thinking that you might have a meal or snack where you know it's a little more calorie dense than nutrient dense, see if you can find a new alternative. So if crackers and cheese has been your thing, maybe look into sliced cucumbers and bell peppers with hummus. Or if you've been doing sandwiches and wraps more commonly, try to change that to a salad or a bowl. I often use the the tip to anybody who likes to go to Qdoba or Chipotle, places like that. If burritos have been your thing, try to go for a burrito bowl. That can really help you still fill up with all the good stuff and just remove that large tortilla that can sometimes get in the way and fill you up with extra carbs that you might not need. So, to tie all this together, just remember that volume eating means that you are eating foods that will fill you up with water, fiber, and nutrients without a bunch of extra calories. And know that it can help support your fullness, can support muscle preservation, and healthy choices that will be a good fit for people who are on GLP-1 medications. And just remember, you don't have to get rid of everything all at once. So making little small swaps here and there can really add up to that long-term success. I did list a few of my sources at the end in case you were interested in learning anything more. And now I will leave it open to questions. All right, with that, I hope that you found this interesting and informative. I hope that you're able to apply some of these concepts to your day-to-day. And if you have any questions about this topic or other nutrition-related concerns, you can always reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff, have them get in touch with me. I know we would all be more than glad to help out. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.